Hello, and today I'd like to start a new series of videos talking about discrimination in the UK. And so the obvious thing to do is to define it, because these words are misused throughout the political spectrum, and so we need to define all of the key words we use when talking about the political situation in UK. So what do I mean by discrimination? Well, the legal definition, actually, let me start by saying, why am I the person to say this? Why am I the person to talk to you about this? Well, I retrained as a solicitor in the early noughties. I volunteered initially at Citizens Advice Bureau and then got a paid job at the CAB until 2012, and then I went self-employed as a lawyer, primarily predominantly focusing on family, on housing, on benefits, and my main interests, human rights and discrimination cases. So my background is 20 years roughly of campaigning and trying to help people who have been discriminated against one way or the other. And so I've got a good experience, good knowledge of the system in the UK. And I have been horrified by what I found, and the fact also nobody's talking about it. So when Reform Party came to prominence in 2024 and I joined, I had a look at their policy document, which states what they would do if they were in power. And one of the key areas, one of the issues, is ending two-tier justice, the two-tier system, which they've just noticed. Obviously, I saw this more than 20 years ago, and I tried to use it as justification for discrimination. Now, they obviously don't know what they're talking about. So this video is also to help Reform Party understand discrimination, understand the two-tier system in the UK, and that's what I hope to talk about over the next video series. So what does discrimination mean? Okay, so this is my summary for you. So there's two types of discrimination. So one is institutional discrimination, the other is environmental discrimination. Now, what do I mean? Well, institutional discrimination means that the law of the country, the policies of the government, directly or indirectly discriminate against one group. And I will give you loads and loads of examples of this. And that means that typically, if a man and a woman are in the same situation, so the man will be treated less favorably than the woman. And we can see that in the prison system. It's obvious. Men and women receive the same, for the same crime, same severity of crime, men get a much more significant punishment than women. Women hardly ever go to prison, and that's because of the discrimination in the sentencing system. And that's indirect discrimination. So that it's possible for women to go to prison, but they receive a much shorter sentence than men. And it's been calculated that the sentence may be as little as 50% of what the man would receive. Same crime, same severity of crime. So that's institutional discrimination. The policies of the Crown Prosecution Service, the Sentencing Guidelines Council, directly or indirectly discriminate against men. We'll go into more details about this in later videos. What do I mean by environmental discrimination? Well, this is the behavior of people which is different based on their different gender. And this is all that feminists have left to argue about, for example, because there's no direct or indirect legal discrimination against women anywhere in the system. So environmental discrimination is where the atmosphere, the people's perception that people are treated differently comes from. But there's actually no evidence to support that it's legal. Because, for example, the so-called pay gap, the mythical pay gap between men and women, which feminists like to go on about, well, they artificially compare subsections of the population and show that one group is earning on average more than the other group. And if you use another artificial subgroup, for example, engineers, the average female engineer gets paid more than the average male engineer. The average single woman under 30 earns more than the average single male under 30. So it depends how you calculate it, because when you look at the entire population, you find men work full-time, women work part-time, for example, much more common. And so the average salary for a full-timer is obviously higher than the average salary for a part-timer. And so you can say, oh, men earn more than women. Well, it's not the same job and it's not an equivalent working condition, so it's not discrimination, and it's simply a choice to work these shorter hours for women. And that's environmental. There's no actual legal, functional, factual basis for the argument. It's simply personal choice. You could argue women having babies and men can't have babies. That's environmental discrimination. It's not in the law. That's something, in fact, is biology, although you might want to challenge that. But the fact is, it's environmental. It's not the government. The government didn't make a law which deliberately made women have babies and stop men having babies. It was the way the system was set up. So we're looking at discrimination in the law and policies of the UK government and the various quangos and other parts of the government. And so over this series of videos, I'll try and look at each area of British society and try to highlight the laws and policies which directly or indirectly discriminate against men. And you'll see there are none that discriminate against women. Okay, so we've talked legal discrimination. Institutional discrimination is everywhere in UK society. But there's two types. So you've got direct and indirect. So what do I mean? So direct discrimination means that all men are treated one way, all women treated another. No man can be treated like a woman, no woman like a man. So you could argue direct discrimination is pretty much everything to do with babies is direct gender discrimination. So for example, abortion. To get an abortion only requires the mother's signature. It doesn't require the father. The putative father has no rights legally to say, obviously in a good relationship, the couple would talk. But the fact is that if a woman decides not to have the baby and a man says, I want it, he can't have it. He can't force the woman to have the baby and give it to him. So once again, it's only by consent that a man could stop abortion. And so this is direct gender discrimination. Only the woman's signature is required in order that the baby is killed. The father has no say in this whatsoever. That's direct. Indirect discrimination is, again, found throughout the system, particularly the child-related system. And so we have a winner-takes-all system. So what do I mean, winner-takes-all? Well, that means that all the rights, privileges, benefits, tax credits, all the money that is given to a parent goes to one person. 100% of all the benefits and tax credits and other inducements and rewards for having a baby go to the primary carer. The primary carer over 90% of the time is the mother or woman. And so this is indirect discrimination because a man, if he got to become primary carer, which usually is only with the consent of the mother, but anyway, if he did become primary carer, he would get all these benefits. So that's indirect gender discrimination. It's something that a man would only get in a very rare situation. And so, but it's possible, it's just extremely unlikely. That's indirect discrimination. Okay, so people talk about positive discrimination as well. And they use this or affirmative action or other situations where people, usually women or other, well, women are not a minority, so we can't say, and other minorities. Women and minorities, let's say BME or other subgroups of society. And is this justifiable? Well, the law says no. The fact you are treating these people more favorably than white people or men or heterosexuals or whichever subgroup you're trying to favor, it's illegal. In British law, discrimination is quite clear that with very, very, very few exceptions, you cannot treat people differently in the same situation. And so employment law has well established the equality issue, the non-discrimination. And there was a lead case. One of the top law firms in London, one of the big four, was found guilty of discriminating against a man. And they said that they had to make somebody redundant because of a slowdown in business in that area. And it was a choice between a man and a woman. And the woman was on maternity leave at the time. And there's very strong protection for women on maternity leave. And so they made the man redundant, and he took them to a tribunal, and he won, and they admitted all the way through that he was the better candidate, but they had been scared of the woman taking them to an employment tribunal if they'd dismissed her, and so they dismissed the man instead. And so you get a lot of this where businesses are running scared of the law.
How can we solve that problem then? We don't want business to be scared to not hire the right people, because I want to be the right people.
Yeah, I mean, we have to get back to a meritocracy. I mean, it's obvious, you go woke, you go broke. You know, the fact is that if you promote people based on any other criteria than ability, then the business will suffer. And there's a lot of evidence out there of the economic damage that the woke system, this so-called affirmative action, has. So no, you've got to do it based on ability. The law says quite clearly that the only time you're allowed to discriminate in favor of a minority is when two people are equally qualified for the same job, and in that situation you can argue that the person from the minority should be given the job rather than the other person. But that's only in a situation of absolute identical condition, situation, experience, which never happens. You know, how do you compare two people and say, oh, they're equally qualified for this job? You don't. And the fact is that the employees are running scared, and so they will err in favor of the woman or the black person or whatever in a situation where they think they can get away with it. You know, the RAF was found guilty of systemic anti-white discrimination, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. You know, it's incredible.
Actually,
nobody was punished for deliberately, directly discriminating against white men going into the RAF, and that went on for years and years. And eventually, the female head of the whatever highlighted this, and she quit, I think, or she got into trouble for highlighting it. In summary, I've introduced the concept of discrimination to you and focused on the legal side of it, and that's the area which I can prove to you. Environmental discrimination, if you like, prejudice, is not something I can prove. You can see it or not, and that's personal choice. And I'm not going to get involved in discussing that because it's personal choice. What I can talk about is the laws and policies in the country which directly or indirectly discriminate against men predominantly. And those I can highlight, I can give you links and show you, and I'll explain it in the videos, the video series, to show you all of these areas, and then you can make your mind up as to whether it's reasonable or not. As to what we do about it, well, in order to solve a problem, you have to identify it first, and that's what these videos are going to try to do for you. Let's go through the entire area of British society, and let's highlight the areas where the legal discrimination, direct or indirect, against men is everywhere, and let me prove it to you. Stay with me, watch the rest of the videos, and see if you come to the end, same as me, and you want to take the red pill and see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Thank you. Hope to see you again.